Hello, everyone. Welcome to Speaker Series 2021. I am your Speaker Series coordinator for the 2020-2021 year. I'm Danielle Mezzanato.
And my name is Julie Coleman. I'm the incoming 2021 Speakers Coordinator. We would like to thank Sam Adamson for her performance of Golden by Ruth B. And I'd also like to introduce Deandra Harps. We have her with us today, and she's also involved with Speaker Series.
If you haven't had a chance yet, please log into Slido. It's actually sli.do. So if you're having any trouble logging in, please go to Slido and enter today's code so that we can get you logged in for attendance. Also, we're doing things a little bit differently this semester. In the past, we've run our Q&A through Slido. Now you can see the chat is open. Please use the chat box here in Zoom to ask your questions during the speaker's presentation. And Julie and I will field those questions at the end for a Q&A. And please remember that this is a public forum and keep your questions respectful and engaging.
All right, and I'd like to introduce Todd Johnson. He's a professor in the Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning Department, and I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce our speaker.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks, Danielle. It's really a pleasure to introduce Carol Mayer Reed as today's speaker, and I've known Carol for over 40 years, and I know that she carries an appreciation of what she got here at Utah State. So when we have alum come and speak and know that that alum has carried kind of the banner and represents the best of what this department has to offer to our students and to the profession as a whole, it's really a great opportunity to have Carol with us today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Carol. She's an amazing person. She's made of strong convictions and ideas and a desire to take action. She is a person of contrast. She is humble but fearless, serious but fun-loving, and buck-eyed but an Aggie, meaning she has another degree from another school in Ohio. Dave Evans, take notice. She is dedicated to her family, to her firm, and to the profession. And she has that balance and consistency that have allowed her to establish and grow a 30-person firm in Portland, Oregon. That's no small feat. To lead and stretch the role of landscape architecture in the Pacific Northwest as a woman is an exceptional achievement. Carol, we are so honored to have you kick off our spring 2021 speaker series.
Thanks, Todd. Wow. Didn't do any revealing past stories. Thank you very much. Anyway, I was going to take a moment today to talk about finding inspiration. And at first I said, it's there all around you. And I thought, no, it's here all around us. So I changed the title of my talk. So I am having trouble moving my slides forward for some reason. Is there a delay on this?
You might want to try the down arrow instead of the over arrow.
Yeah. They're all making noises that I don't recognize. Huh.
Either that, or if you hover near the bottom left area on your screen, there might be an arrow that comes up. Yeah, that you can just click that.
Oops, wrong way. There we go. All right. Ha. Thank you. So again, thanks for the introduction, Todd, and thank you for asking me to be part of the speaker series. I'm really honored about it. Let's talk about where we find inspiration. Do any of you ever worry about where you will get your ideas? Do you ever feel like your creative well will run dry? You don't know where to turn? When will the lightning bolt strike? I think we've all been through this. On the other hand, do you ever feel overwhelmed with ideas, abundant precedent images? You can't sort through them all, or maybe you're part of a team with divergent ideas. How do you work through that? How do you open your own mind to the possibilities? And perhaps I can pass on some thoughts and ideas, sources of inspiration from the perspective of a seasoned practitioner. So, a little bit about my firm and my personal background. Mayor Reed's based in downtown Portland, Oregon. This is our building and our studio with a view of Mount Hood and the city. We've been here for about 43 years, and we've grown to a staff of 30. We're into our second generation of owners. Landscape architecture, urban design, visual communications, and product design are the disciplines that we offer. Our office is unique in the way that we work. We collaborate and we learn from each other. Some of our projects are cross-disciplinary. We draw from talents across the disciplines to promote strong placemaking. Some say our visual communications work and wayfinding projects are very sensitive to sight. And some say that our design work has a particular legibility to it. I take that as a compliment. I'm gonna try to get out of the sunlight that's happening to come into my window. Anyway, those are the practices. And then in our LA practice, we do about 60% public work, about 40% private. Those consist of master plans, parks, plazas, higher education, hospitals, schools, trails, corporate campuses, mixed use housing, museums, convention center, towers, wineries, and even cemeteries. And I'm sure there's some that I didn't mention. We particularly like working on brownfields, post-industrial sites that promise something different for the future. In fact, we have a specialty in post-industrial waterfronts, including Willamette Falls Riverwalk, a 6-year project with our collaborators based in New York's Snøhetta, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. We also practice urban design, working on transportation projects such as light rail transit, streetscapes, bridges, trails. We shape the ways that people get around in cities. And it's actually easier, I think, to talk a little bit about what we don't do, like private gardens or single family residential. It's never to say never, but there are always exceptions, but it's not because they aren't important. It's just that we're not set up for them. We try to work on larger projects in areas that are already urbanized, building denser, more efficient cities. Sometimes our work has taken us a far field to places like Kazakhstan and Kuwait, but actually, typically, we work closer to home in the Pacific Northwest and in the Portland area. Office culture, where would we be without it? Here are our people. We're a very tight-knit studio and we enjoy one another's company. We have a great team put together, and when we're working intently on something, we call it going to design camp. It's fun. These sessions are a welcome break from the rest of the everyday world of construction documents, meetings, project management, and business administration. We're also open to collaboration with other disciplines or designers who allow us to think in ways outside of our own experience and our own expertise. Here we are now. Here's the culture now. Sadly, we really miss our get-togethers in our studio. We're like a family. And although we seem to work well remotely, we did manage to have a really fun holiday party on Zoom in December. And a handful of us still go in the office each week to check on things. But actually, it now seems weird to see someone in person. We'll get back to normal soon. Here's our city, and you can rest your eyes on this image for a while because this is where I was headed all along over 40 years ago. I was born and raised in Ohio on a river. I was what they call the tomboy, a kid that grubbed around with my brother in meadows and woodlands and creeks and rivers. I loved plants and animals, and I was also artistic and eventually earned a BFA in interior design from Ohio State. My first job was drafting for an LA for a year. I loved landscape architecture and I realized how much there was to learn. It was perfect. Someone I worked with, a Utah State grad, in fact, told me, "You have the soul of a Westerner." And I thought, I don't even know what that is. So at his suggestion, I applied for and was accepted at Utah State, and I attended there from 1974 to 77, where I earned my MLA. I studied under those legendary professors, Dick Toth, Vern Budge, Jerry Furman, Craig Johnson. And I'd like to take this opportunity to pay a debt of gratitude for the way they imparted their best knowledge and supported me, especially as a woman student. I was one of the 2 women in the grad school at the time. And yes, there were a few legendary students there too, like Todd Johnson, who were very influential, whether he knows it or not. My husband, Michael, he was my boyfriend at the time, had followed me out to Logan. So we were ready for big adventures of skiing, backpacking, hiking. And as you know, Logan is ideal for all those activities. Sure enough, we did have the souls of a Westerner. The vast, stunning landscapes of the West were so amazing to us. We spent as much time as possible in them. And if USU would have awarded a master's degree in skiing or hiking, I would have earned one. Then I took a field trip to the Pacific Northwest, Vancouver, Victoria, Seattle, and Portland. I was moved by the magnificence of the trees and the waterways everywhere. Somehow I knew I would gravitate to the Northwest. I chose Portland. It was a smaller West Coast city that seemed friendly and progressive. There was actually something really familiar about it and sort of Midwestern, being settled in the beginning by farmers. But I admired Oregon as a state with its strong land use laws and accessible beaches. People seemed to have deep environmental values, as did I. Portland had an urban savvy. It valued its downtown. It turned a freeway into a waterfront park and built Halprin's forecourt fountain. Any city that would take that kind of risk was really appealing to me. Fortunately, Michael decided it would work for him too. And we became part of a very tight design community that we've grown to appreciate. I worked for an LA firm for 6 years. Then we had our first child. Well, long story short, I sure lost ground in my professional advancement. So I started my own small commercial and residential practice in 1983. As a sole practitioner, I joined Michael in his office space, and we put a partnership together in 1987. 2 disciplines. We hired employees and fast forward grew it over time into the firm we have today. Now we have 2 more partners who emerged as leaders from within the firm. So a source of inspiration is right out the window. And the diverse landscapes of the Pacific Northwest. This is our office in particular with its view of the city, Willamette River, Mount Hood, and we're keen observers at the macro scale. There's always changing conditions of weather, rainbows, seasons, the river, and the city skyline. I really miss that view from my office right now. Another source of inspiration is our city itself. The once vibrant, not right now, walkable downtown and its people. The land use policies, the smart planning and environmental ethics are largely understood by a great vast majority of people here. Green infrastructure was pioneered here and we've played a part. The majority of our work is done right here in the region and we learn from what we've built. Our work shapes the urban fabric, one block or a project at a time. After this many years in business, we're seeing what it all adds up to. One project sometimes sets the stage and becomes catalytic for what is to follow. Cities are never done. Our city is our classroom and our laboratory. During this past year, we've experienced a substantial setback in our city, but we have a belief now that we'll move forward and having learned some really important lessons along the way. It'll take a while. We have a continual source of inspiration, the people. This is Barbara Feely on the right side there, a Portland landscape architect who carried on a practice from the late 1940s until the 90s. She studied under Jens Jensen, if you can believe that. Barbara was a pioneer in our profession. I met her when she was in her 80s, still practicing. She was the most important influence in my career and became a close friend and mentor. I never worked for her, but I would submit her projects for awards and they always won. She understood the challenges of raising a family and pursuing a meaningful profession. We enjoyed telling each other stories about working with difficult architects and engineers and clients and contractors. Then she would say, but we're the fortunate ones. We have chosen the path of beauty. Lori Olin was also, as continues to be a friend and colleague over the years. He is a phenomenal mentor and a practitioner. We've teamed with him on several projects and competitions and gotten to know him well. He's never without a sketchbook or a funny thing to say. You may not have heard of Robert Marassi, but he was a local practitioner here in Portland who dedicated himself and his practice to high art, careful composition, and using stone as a sculptural material. His concepts were strong and meaningful. His firm and mine sometimes competed for projects. I always dreaded the head-on competition. He passed away a few years ago, but left many legacy projects around the region. Richard Haig was also a really great influence in my practice, and I got to work with him once a little bit and always enjoyed his funny stories and his insight. And then Cornelia Oberlander in Vancouver, BC has been really inspirational. I studied her work after visiting Vancouver. I've met her a few times and always appreciated her sophisticated design approach, elegant solutions, and commitment to women in the profession. She's truly a pioneer. Each of these thoughtful, insightful practitioners took an artful approach to all they have done. And we have to remember that projects are never done in a vacuum, always an in-house team and always with other consultants like architects, planners, and engineers. And the clients themselves, they offer huge inspiration. They're the people that we work with and we work for. So I would be remiss in saying that my staff, if I didn't say that my staff inspires me to no end with their inquiries, design acumen, and commitment. It seems there's no end of what we are capable of tackling together. And then my husband and partner, Michael, who shares the same passions, our love of design, travels, and raising our kids. And then there's the kids ourselves. This isn't them on there. Those are my grandkids. But Elizabeth and Alex were the ultimate teachers, now adults, as well as our wonderful grandchildren that you see here, who give us another chance to relive childhood, and it's a joy to see through their eyes. And then there's books that we all read and gain a lot of insight and inspiration from, and I thought I'd just point this one out. This is Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. Throughout the last year, our socioeconomic awareness has been raised to a much higher level. This may be the most important lesson from COVID for landscape architects, urban designers, and planners. In our workplaces and our communities, it's become so much more evident about inadequate housing, unjust conditions, and lack of equity in our social structure, education, healthcare, and environmental justice. The National ASLA Vision 2100 conference this year was very strong in these themes. And before us is a vast challenge to first educate ourselves about pertinent issues, gain an understanding, and then to ensure that our communities are more equitable and accessible. We also need to understand about sociology. So if you haven't done so already, please read Cast by Isabella Wilkerson. It's about how our society is structured, comparing our own classism to India and Nazi Germany. Sounds terrible, right? Everyone should read it. It's not just for people in our profession. I think you might find it's a difficult read, but it's also very difficult to disagree with. So images. We all use plenty of images from the internet and our online research, but here's just a few images from my own catalog of landscapes and waterfalls in the Pacific Northwest. Images from the internet are nothing like your own personal experience of a space. Your own snapshot is a brief reminder of what else you saw and felt and learned, not someone else's. I draw upon these images as inspiration for water features, stormwater treatment facilities, and things like that that we designed. Sometimes the bioswales or water features are naturalistic in character. Sometimes they're abstractions of a natural composition. Sometimes it's not even about water at all, just the idea of a shape, a pattern, a form, a reflection, a source of light, or a point of view that's evocative. And then sketchbooks, decades of sketchbooks are a source of inspiration. My travels throughout the world include dozens of countries on nearly all continents. Again, while online resources and images are accessible and incredible, they're only images and never to be substituted for actual experiences. Precedent images that we find are not solving the same design challenges that we face. Our ideas must be authentic and they must be original. I always travel with the lens of a designer. I never take a vacation from being a designer. Even before I met Lori Olin, I always carried a sketchbook, made notes, recorded through photography, but it's not enough for me to take just pictures. I try to spend time sketching details of something, whatever it is that catches my eye. Sometimes I indulge some time on an art project, like the one on the right. The point is to spend mental time with the subject matter. These sketch pages are from Turkey. Often I write in addition to my illustrations, or sometimes I write pages without any illustrations at all, depending on my time and mood. Or I sketch on site and add color later. Writing is really an important skill for landscape architects. Turns out my interests and classes in high school journalism have actually served me well. But I'm predominantly a visual person. I love to study a composition or color or pattern, shape or form. It must be the fine arts degree coming out in me. I like to record colors, and these are from the color of the Aegean Sea that change throughout the day. Often I sketch while I'm traveling, and not always the most scenic views either. Later, these sketches from my time in Kuwait remind me of how I felt when I was there. It was a very raw and unfamiliar place to work and visit, about as opposite of Portland as one can get. And I felt that very deeply while I was there. I longed to spend more time to understand the landscape, the culture, the people. These are quick gestural sketches of the desert. I wanted to see how few lines it would take to capture the feeling of the dunes. If you look closely, you can see some of the ghostly outlines of the camels that I sketched on the back side of one of the pages. Camels were fascinating to me, and I even got to ride one. So that's to say, in landscape architecture, you never know where you'll end up or what you'll do. Now I'll present a couple of case studies where I've applied the inspirational resources and thought process. The first is a large hospital expansion in Portland for Oregon Health and Science University. The campus is like a hill town. It's a cacophony of buildings, sky bridges, and fragments of landscape scattered here and there. There's nothing cohesive about it. The huge hospital building didn't even appear to fit on the site. That's that little circle in the yellow down there, leaving a very tight area for accessible pedestrian connections up a very steep slope. Our job was to design the ground plane between the buildings. Our site there in yellow, it had about 70 feet of site length to climb 27 vertical feet. Seemed impossible. First, we analyzed all the circulation and connections between the buildings, parking garages, sky bridges, trails, and campus-wide, and even a route down to a future light rail on Barber Boulevard. Check out that little purple zigzag. Again, that's our site in the middle of all this, and it's key that everybody be able to use this area. In the studio, our team spent a lot of time doing grading plans, cutting sections, trying to fit all the pieces and ramps in this leftover space, given all the other programmatic demands, utilities, fire access, clearances, you name it. And oh, the hospital wanted an outdoor area of respite for garden and staff and visitors. And oh, how about a space for occupational therapy? And I was like, oh, really? We spent more than a few wakeful nights thinking about how this three-dimensional puzzle could possibly fit. I wrote about it. I did a series of thumbnail sketches one night before I went to bed. I was not afraid to draw something that seemed to be so obvious. You can see those ugly little folded switchback ramps that we've all seen or perhaps had to resort to when push comes to shove. I hated those things. And getting something down on paper was just the point. However frustrating it seemed, it was just paper after all, and a step in the belief that the process would definitely get better from here. Later that night, sure enough, I woke up and was gifted with a seed of an idea. I got out my bedside sketchbook, started writing again, and then a simple doodle actually came out of my pencil. Quit fighting the contours. Instead of compressing switchback ramps together and looking for a flat spot for a garden, we'd broaden the landings back out, make them into something more than just circulation, borrow the landscape from the forested surroundings, and insert a gentle garden of respite all along the way. It seems so simple and so obvious and so like, duh, right? But for many projects, I'm still a big advocate of hand drawing at the concept level. Let those doodles flow. And instead of worrying about the design forms and forcing it into CAD or Revit too soon, sometimes those add to the hurdles before you. If you can be free with your hand and your paper, you may get a lot farther together. So anyway, with that mental hurdle behind us, it was onward to test the concept through a whole lot of different lenses and proceed through the rest of the phases of design and construction with the architects and engineers. These are actually the final renderings that we used for our design approval on our client presentation, but we did do a lot on trace, and we did do a lot of 3D studies to really test and make sure this thing was going to work. So it's still a very difficult project to design and build. It's all shoehorned in. It's meeting all the edges of the spaces, all the finished floor elevations, parking lot, roadway, staying beneath the maximum gradients while maximizing the pedestrian experience. So wish us well. We haven't begun to build it yet. Hopefully it'll happen soon. There's the final design that we had, the renderings to present to the city. It was accepted. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Willamette Falls Riverwalk in Oregon City. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. It's gotten some attention in the magazines. Probably one of the most transformational projects in my career. And you can find inspiration everywhere in the site, from the falls itself to the post-industrial brownfield, storied with fascinating layers and history. Beyond Niagara, Willamette Falls is the second largest waterfall by volume in North America. This aerial provides the context of the vicinity. The Blue Heron property is outlined in blue, and the white lines are the pedestrian and bike connections to it and open spaces. Across the falls, access to the falls has been closed for over 150 years due to the industry. The site consists of an 18-acre post-industrial brownfield that was once a spiritual place of Native American and salmon and lamprey harvests and ceremonies. Then it became a flour mill, then a timber mill and a woolen mill, and most recently a paper mill that was closed several years ago. So to meet this major challenge of a project, we brought in landscape architects Michelle Delk and Matt McPann from Snowhetta, an internationally recognized multidisciplinary firm. We formed a tight collaborative team along with our engineers, planners, permit specialists, and other technical expertise. We also brought in a team of redevelopment planners from Dialogue, based in Vancouver, BC. This by far was the most important and complicated site that any of us has ever worked on. This illustration, let me look at my notes a second. There we go. This illustration is our concept design for the entire Blue Heron site and highlighting the Riverwalk itself. It's an episodic sequence of spaces to experience, from overlooks to plazas, restoration of habitat, all interwoven together as one proceeds to the final viewpoint of the falls. These overarching core values drove the design: public access, healthy habitat, historical and cultural interpretation, and economic redevelopment. Each decision that we made had to be done with these parameters in mind. It was really important. Experiencing the site in all seasons and all vantage points was key. Parts of the falls remain natural basalt cliffs, but all of it has been dammed for power generation. Fisheries, habitat, and fish passage are essential components of this project. There's also a number of public agencies involved. I can't remember how many, but our main client is made up of 5, and from there it reaches out into the dozens. It's also been a very important project for the community and for people to get engaged with, and having these wonderful forums and tours of the site. So this is the current state of the site: dense with artifacts, old foundations, railroad trestles, tail races, and vacant buildings. The Blue Heron site can be very disoriented, and it actually goes down 30 feet below this deck. I'll give you a little show of that in a minute. We've had to visit the site a number of times to make sense out of the spaces, document existing conditions, examine materials, and match up periods of history in the man-made industrial layers that have been built over the original basalt. We've had to visit a number of times to make sense out of the space, document existing conditions. These are looking at materials, and also looking in the subterranean areas of the site, again, 30 feet below the main level. Acres to wander in with a flashlight, pitch black in places without one. The original 1850s flour mill still exists deep underneath the other buildings. There's moments of incredible post-industrial beauty as moss has overtaken old power generations and the basalt palisades along the river. There's no shortage of inspiration and themes given this rich history. And the materials themselves are common, but they're photogenic. In fact, this site's a paradise for the photographer and the artists. We looked at a lot of project precedents that are similar. This is the Landschaft Park in Duisburg, Germany, that I went to visit. I had to see for myself how a site that was even vaguely resembling ours could be open to the public. Basically, what I learned is we have a lot more attorneys than they do. You can go a lot of places on this site. But anyway, back to Willamette Falls. We also looked for inspiration from the nearby natural landscapes, places that offered habitat of what might have been there and what held cultural significance. Part of our mission was to incorporate habitat into this environment that has grown even more foreign over time into something else that was never there originally. And while design forms and materials were sometimes derived from natural conditions, there were also these contrasting raw industrial aesthetics that we were interested in. Despite the industrial state of affairs, the air is filled with raptors that feed on the fish in the river and at the falls, reminding us of what's most important of all, and that's the cycle of life. Once in a while, when we were out in the boats in the river, we would find fish surfacing, really large fish, and herds of seagulls, flocks of seagulls coming down to feed on them, only to see a sea lion emerge and to try to take as much of that whole bounty as it was coming to the surface. So you never know what you'll get when you're out there. So the team spent countless hours together in close collaborations. We went to New York, they came to Portland. We traded ideas and fed on each other's notions. When we couldn't be together, we sent studies, images, sketches, drawings, and narratives back and forth. All along this design journey, little ideas would come to mind of what we wanted people to experience. Some were only seeds of ideas that were related and then or refined and incorporated. And this is just a handful of little doodles that I would end up doing oftentimes on a picture or in my head after I left the site. The team went through a great deal of analysis, writing, public agency meetings, and public process. We had over 2,000 people participate in our forums. Snøhetta developed these rigorous studies. Their graphics were incredible in the form of not only physical models, but plenty of 3D views, cross sections, and other graphics too numerous to show. We all put our stuff out there. We were fearless. This final image or series of images are the resulting renders that Snøhetta produced to portray this collective vision that we had to engage all 5 senses, to feel the mist, reveal the past, and capture the stunning beauty of the place. So as landscape architects, we're privileged to work on such assignments, a lifetime experience for sure. The sources of and inspiration have led us to this point, and now we're getting ready to commence the phase 1 construction, the next part of the journey to make this vision into reality. Wish us luck. We have to build what we put on paper. We have to make it meet a budget. So there's a lot riding on this phase 1. So pulling back a little closer to home now, COVID has changed us forever and our design practices. We've moved to our home offices, and suddenly our perspective on public open space has changed. The sources of inspiration may now be found in our backyards, in our neighborhoods, in our parks. People out walking, the need to stay distanced yet connected, acknowledging people on the street or from a front porch. They become more personal and perhaps more sacred. Sources of inspiration are found in the ordinary. In my own backyard, a groomed, carefully composed space, a place I enjoy spending time and working in my garden. Its microclimate, the cycles of light during the day and the seasons, the urban wildlife, and particularly an owl that lives right outside my bedroom door, or excuse me, my bedroom office door window. And even the little scribbles of sidewalk chalk, the little rainbows give me help for the future. Those are for my grandchildren. So most importantly, I think it's our job not only to take inspiration, but to give it to others to find out what's possible. Thank you for your attention. And now I wanted to save some time for Q&A.
Well, thank you, Carol. So great to see. Is this a relative here in this final slide?
It's our marketing person's daughter.
Really cute. We were curious. She kind of looks like you.
Oh, well, you can't make a child look like that. That only happens in a very authentic way. So it's one of my favorite pictures.
Very inquisitive.
Yeah.
It reminds me what you said at the beginning of your talk of romping through the forest and the creeks with your brother. And question that came up for me in looking at some of your projects, I was looking at the OHSU project, and I love that you talk about sketching. It's something that is really encouraged through a lot of our professors in our classes. Mm-hmm. And showing that problem solving through that process. When it comes to problem solving and projects like trying to figure out that ramp, would you say that you lean more towards your intuition, or is it logic, or how do you get through that problem solving?
It always has to be a combination of both. I mean, if they want just a logical kind of solution, they would probably turn to a civil engineer and they would figure it out, right? But what can landscape architects bring that wouldn't even occur to them? That's where the magic happens. And there is a lot of intuition from it. One of the projects that I thought about was down in San Francisco, the Lombard Street. And if you've ever driven on that, that's a really cool experience. And you don't want to go on with a clutch in your car. You don't want to try going up it. You don't even want to go. Probably don't even drive with the clutches anymore. I still do, but the hill that is on is so beautiful, and it's such a great thing that they even did it. As opposed to just like trying to make one more street go down a really steep hill. So someone along the way had the intuition that that was a good idea. And I do remember being inspired by that.
That's nice. That actually leads me really well into our next question, which comes from a faculty member, Brent Chamberlain, who's going to be leading a Pacific Northwest travel course by bike next year. And
Wow.
they'll be coming through Portland. They're also going to be looking all across from BC and ending in San Francisco, which you just mentioned. And he's asking, are there any iconic sites that you would recommend as a landscape architect? Any LA projects from BC to San Francisco that are must-sees?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think, gosh, there's so much that I would have to give him a list, give him a list for sure. In Seattle, I love the area where the new museum and the new waterfront's going in. I mean, there's just a spectacular waterfront along there, so that would not to be missed. Up in Vancouver, their waterfronts are just spectacular, and they're all connected with bikeways that just go everywhere. And if you're ever bored in that city, I think it's your own darn fault. In Vancouver, the Museum of Anthropology that Cornelia Oberlander did, to me, was one of the must-see projects. And I remember being inspired by that decades ago. And so that would be definitely worth visiting. In Portland, I mean, you want to see Pioneer Square for sure. And as long as you're there, you can see Director Park. And as long as you're there, you can see the South Park blocks and the North Park blocks. And you can stop at Powell's Bookstore and you can see the waterfront. And then you can go across the bridge on the East Bank Esplanade, and you can go down to OMSI and across the Tillicum Crossing and into OHSU and South Waterfront. So yeah, there's a lot to see.
They could do their whole trip just in Portland,
They
right?
could, yeah. I would give it a little time. We're a little rough around the edges right now. I don't know about the other cities. I haven't traveled, obviously, for quite some time, over a year. But Portland's going to need some time to heal, to be honest. We've had a lot of disruption here. We still have protests going on. We still have our city boarded up downtown. So I would say if you can spend some time across the border in Canada right now, that's probably a good idea. I don't know if they're letting people in there, but yeah, it's going to be a while for Portland. I would say a couple of years.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks for your response on that. I have another student from one of our seniors in the undergraduate program, and she was curious with those pieces of inspiration that you know latch onto. How do you communicate those to your clients and really engage them in that process?
Well, I probably didn't say enough about the clients that we do work with. We are very fortunate that we work with a lot of clients with vision.
Mm.
And it's not a great stretch to explain something to them if you involve them from the very beginning. I mean, it's their project. They've hired us. We work for them, and we want them to see the best that we can do, and we want to do the very best work we can. So being able to match up their ideas and their notions of what needs to be done with ours is really important. We always have some, startup meetings where we brainstorm. Typically we'd be getting together in person for meetings and getting to know each other. We bring in other consultants that we think are relevant. Sometimes we bring in artists, depending on the project. We'll bring in, people from a stronger ecological background if it's a very sensitive site, that has wildlife or something that's really important to the core mission of the project. We had consultants on fisheries and people from the tribal nations who partnered with us on Willamette Fall because we didn't understand the salmon and the lamprey, especially the lamprey being a different kind of fish than you normally encounter. So we just open it up to make it as rich as it can be in the very beginning, and then we sort through, the steps one by one as we go through time, meet deadlines, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it seems like having that relationship from the beginning makes it really easy
Yeah.
to communicate.
I didn't expect to have sunlight on my face, so I'm sort of dodging around. We have sunlight here in Portland today.
That's a rarity this month in Portland.
Right.
So yeah, you got to soak it up if you have it.
I know I want to, but then I can't see the screen. Sorry.
I have a question that actually came from a few different students. A lot of seniors in our program were asking this, and
Mhm.
also some grads who are about to finish up. Uh, you have a unique experience in starting a firm with your husband and also coming from Utah State. We're curious what recommendations you would give to someone who's contemplating setting up their own firm, and what made you feel like you were prepared and ready to do that?
This was a long time ago. Young and naive is what really was happening at that point. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's a great idea to set something up with your partner or your husband. I mean, honestly, Michael and I have a very unique relationship, and we get along really, really well. And Todd knows Michael really well too. Um, we've also seen some married business partnership relationships that have gone down in flames. So you have to really pick out whether it's a good idea to go into business with your spouse or not. You know, what's on the line in terms of the ultimate relationship that you want to have with somebody. Um, but you know, I just started really early on. Michael had his sole proprietorship. I had mine. There was a period of time where we sort of played in separate sandboxes, and actually through a lot of our practice we have had most of our focus in our own disciplines. He's an environmental graphic designer and industrial designer, and we do collaborate and our staff collaborates, but we had a lot of healthy respect staying out of each other's stuff along the way, and that's one reason we got along so well. But we started small. I mean, they were sole proprietorships, and then we would hire a person for this or for that. And when we started finally hiring staff that worked for both of us, and we were writing separate paychecks to them and buying computers and starting to get more sophisticated in our business practice, we went, wait, if for no other reason, we should put it together as a business entity. And we seem to be getting along okay, right? It seemed like a good idea. And so it actually was. He just retired like 3 years ago, and I missed him so much in the beginning. You know, when in our office, when his desk, he wasn't sitting at his desk anymore. I felt very sad about that. Now we're in the same household every day, all day. So anyway, we get to see a lot of each other. We still get along.
Well, that makes me think we should mention that Julie and I live in the same household. We
Right.
don't work together a whole lot, but in case you're wondering why we're not masked up, that's because we live in the same household.
Yeah.
Yeah, sharing the same germ pool. But for us, we just started small. I'd say a lot of people come into businesses now and join a firm that needs, here's a little tidbit that I'm gonna tell people. If you're really interested in starting a practice, you might think about trying to join one that's already in existence and join as a partner and then grow with that firm, because a lot of people are the same age as me or the same age bracket. We're baby boomers, and not all of us want to do this for the rest of our lives. So, just like the junior partners that came in with Michael and I mean, they've been phenomenal, Jeremy Shane and Kathy Fry, and they're so bright and taking us to a whole nother level. So it's really appreciated. You might think about that rather than starting from scratch, unless you just have to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And, why not build off of the work that someone has already laid down for you?
If you believe in it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying to get out of the sunlight again.
Todd, I noticed you unmuted yourself. Did you have a question you wanted to ask Carol?
Yeah, Carol, that was just awesome. That is so solid and so you. The projects are amazing. I think what we got out of this place was an amazing cultural experience, meaning the culture of design. And our current faculty, I think, is amazing, and there's a great culture. But talk about the culture of your firm and what it took to cultivate it and what it takes to manage it And what do you look for in an employee as a cultural contributor to Mayor Reed?
Wow. Well, when we first started out, we didn't call things culture. In the original part of our development of our firm, we hired really good people that we liked and believed in and that we trusted and who had these amazing design talents. We have people that have been with us for the length of the firm, believe it or not. We have people that have been with us for 10 years or more, very commonly, some 15 or 20 years. And so on one hand, we have a very solid group of people that are very committed to one another, that form a really great resource and well of creativity that, that is just, you wouldn't have ever convinced me it was possible to see that. But on the other hand, we've brought in people through the years and they have come to us when we've advertised for jobs, or it might have been somebody that we knew that was looking. But bringing new talent is absolutely essential to a firm. And we learn so much from the people that enter our firm as either some fresh out of school, mostly have a few years under their belt, and the kind of enthusiasm and talent and resourcefulness and tech savvy, it's just absolutely amazing. In terms of the culture, now we spend a lot more time talking about it. And something we've done really recently is set up a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee within the office to really examine ourselves. We are not as diverse, culturally diverse of an office as we'd like to be. We do have about equal numbers of women working in the firm, but I think we're going to have to work harder to recruit people of color to our firm because we believe that they have such an important perspective. We need to hear those voices. We need to understand their points of view. So that's the next step for us when we get back into another hiring mode, is being able to recruit people that come from different socioeconomic backgrounds as ourselves, and what can they bring to us? What do we need to learn from them?
Excellent answer.
And I think that bringing that into the office and having that perspective is so important, and a responsibility that really is important for a firm leader. A question from a student is, you spoke to this somewhat in some of the projects, and as well as mentioning Isabella Wilkerson's book Cast.
Mhm.
But speaking more to that equity and social justice, how do you incorporate that into your designs and the work that you're doing? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that a little bit more. You know, it's sort of like we were talking about landscape architecture. Once you learn about it, you can never not see it. Once you learn what it is, everywhere you go, it's there, and not everybody has that level of understanding of our profession from the inside out that they can travel and see it. I think is similar to coming from, a dominant culture as I do, and needing to learn so much more about different points of view. I mean, I live in an integrated neighborhood and I have friends and neighbors who are African American. We don't always talk about these issues. We're friends and, great, great to all get along and, enjoy one another. But in terms of having the very important discussions about how somebody feels about something, a public space, a park, their neighborhood, all these other important issues, I think those are hard conversations to have. I feel like I'm more able to have them now after having read that book. I've got a number of books that I've been reading. One is White Fragility, and that one's a tough one to read. It really is. It's a hard one to get through, and it really makes you think, but it's good. And so as we work now, we're looking at our team and we're saying, what are we missing here? Who are we missing? Who isn't at the table? How do we recruit people to our projects and to the sources of input, or a consultant, a specialty person that we could bring onto the team that's really going to provide insight? And one project that we're pursuing right now, we brought an Asian American artist to the team who lives in the neighborhood where the park is. And we had more fun talking to him, and he was just a character and so excited to be on a team because he's never done anything like this. And we're just excited to continue to create opportunities where we not only hire more people that have different perspectives and backgrounds, but consult with more people who are different than ourselves. One thing I might say, I don't know if you guys have talked about this, but this idea of SEPTED, Todd, do you guys talk about that a lot in design?
We had actually our past department head, if you want to share, Todd. I know
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I know that our previous department head, Sean Michael, did a lot of his research in SEPTED.
Oh, really? Because that's something that we would typically, we're at a light rail meeting, or we're at a, public space meeting. Everybody goes, oh yeah, SEPTED's really important. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Only to find out that it's incredibly offensive to certain people in the communities where they're feeling targeted and they're feeling like they're being put on display, or that that this sort of principle triggers a response to them that isn't warranted. And so, we don't have those answers. We don't understand it enough. We just know it's definitely worth a very serious conversation, and we're looking for partners who are willing to talk to us about it.
I mean, the thought that comes to mind is that there were a group of us that went to Philadelphia to meet with the mayor's office after 2016 election, and they were kind of asking about, what's the future of planning in complex cities like Philadelphia. And they had the issues were, temperature and neighborhoods, and climate and neighborhoods, and class. And everybody got kind of concerned about what the next 4 years are going to be like. And we just said, we're going to put our heads down and work hard and do the same stuff we've always been doing, right? And now we've been through the last year with the pandemic. The question becomes, how do we prepare ourselves to have a bigger voice, a stronger role in solving these problems? And I think, reading the books and getting ourselves accustomed to having these more difficult conversations is going to be important for the full spectrum of people in this country, regardless of your political persuasion or whatever. But the extreme opinions on either side are not helping.
Right.
And the ability to cross over and to find majorities. I feel like I'm back in Israel. When I lived in Jerusalem, the democracy there was so raw, and the coalitions were being put together on a weekly basis. And people were talking about stuff, life and death stuff, every day, every week. It was so vivid. And I think, we just got extremely complacent about not talking to each other. And I think a lot of these problems, regardless of what side of the fence we're on, these problems come from untreated, staying in your own field and not crossing over and not being able to have the conversation. So
right. And lack of trust.
Yeah, exciting time that we face.
Yeah, well, as landscape architects, we need to be at the center of this and really helping solve problems, because I think we can bring multiple perspectives about things that can matter to everybody, that do matter to everybody.
Yeah. And I applaud you, Carol, in, like you said, over 40 years of practice, to have the humility to say that you're still learning and there are things that you're just now learning about, or finding answers to. And that humility and showing that to us students who are coming out is, we really appreciate that.
Well, it's a lifelong pursuit. You can't know it all and you can't experience it all, but you can try and you can do the best in the role that you're given. But Todd, you said something in the beginning about me that I haven't talked about, but I try to be an advocate outside of what my project assignments are in areas of my community. And I do get involved in some touchy political situations from time to time. And I walk a very tight rope sometimes of how I want to use my influence and how I want to use my resources. But I don't shy away.
Yeah. Yeah, you've always been that way.
I have a lot of fight in me. Not only did my brother and I fight, but we fought with our dad too. So we got a lot of fight skills.
You always have a smile on your face, even when you're fighting.
I know, that's one of the tricks.
I think that's
That's
the
what my
real
mom taught
answer
me.
to the earlier question of what do you need to start your own firm? Make sure you have some fight. Yeah.
And a smile at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. My mom would say, kill them with kindness.
Mm.
Well, thank you, Carol. It's been just such a treat to have you today.
Good. Well, I thank
much,
you for
Carol.
inviting me. I really appreciate it. And is there some hangout thing we do after this, and how does that work?
Yes. So before we go to the hangout, we have an invite only hangout for graduate students to be involved in speaker series. This is a project that we tried to do in the past. When we were in person, we'd go to lunch with the speakers, and so we're now trying to find a way to get students engaged. So if you are a graduate student and you haven't registered for a virtual hangout this semester, please reach out to Deandra to do so. We have Carol's event just after this talk, as well as 4 more virtual hangouts coming up. And I'll actually share my screen.
I have to stop sharing, don't I? Oop, got it.
And so just to go through our lineup for this spring real quickly before we go, we have Jarek Boss from OJB, who will be joining us in just 2 weeks from now on February 19th. Then Gina Ford and Bree Hensold from Agency Planning will be with us on March 5th. Then we have Anya Dolemsky from SWA. That will be an internal lecture for just faculty and students on March 26th. And then followed by C.L. Bohannon, who's a professor at Virginia Tech, on April 2nd. And then rounding out our speaker series this spring for the Vern Budge lecture will be Bill Johnson. And so we'll have plenty of opportunities to engage coming up. And I just like for us to thank Carol one more time for coming today. And for those of you who are coming to the virtual hangout, you've received an email, and we'll be reconnecting in about 10 minutes on that Zoom link.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much.